What do you do if a gas line is damaged in your neighborhood by a construction crew? You are evacuated from your home or business as a safety precaution, and that's when you find out that a homeless shelter with 180 units is about to be built in your neighborhood. That's coming up on Brooklyn 45, along with Sharon Rose talking about the importance of vitamin D in this very hot weather. What's also hot is the race for Brooklyn District Attorney. And my first guest is the District Attorney himself, Charles Hynes. Welcome to Brooklyn 45.
Professor Tate, thank you so much for having me. It's good to be with you.
Well, how hot is this race for you? You have been in office for 23 years and you're seeking a 7th term.
Right. I don't know what race people are watching when they say it's a hotly contentious, very close race. They're not watching the race I'm in. We've had very, very good feedback. My deputy campaign manager is the Reverend W. Tahaka Robinson, who is the founder of the Brooklyn Anti-Violence Coalition. He's also known as the son of Assemblywoman Annette Robinson. We've worked very, very hard in central Brooklyn. I think I have a great deal of support among the African American community in particular because of all of the great programs we have that are meant to do so much to help people, prevent them from getting involved in criminal activity, and if they do get arrested, to have intervention programs. Of course, we have a great program for the formerly incarcerated. Across Brooklyn, I guess I've been in a kind of education campaign since October of 2005, and I think that's resonating. People are reacting to the kind of programs we have. They know that I believe as a article of faith that the easiest thing I do is put people in jail. It doesn't take any intellect. The real struggle is to have effective prevention programs, intervention programs, and then of course reentry programs. So I don't minimize the fact that it's a serious campaign. The great Major Owens once told me when I said, "Gee, you don't have much of a candidate," he said, "He's breathing, isn't he?" So you take nothing for granted.
And you're breathing. You've been doing that for 23 years.
Yes, sir.
Looking back over these 23 years, how different has it been compared 23 years ago to now, and the progression over the years?
My heavens, it's been a sea change. In 1960, we averaged 158,000 serious felonies in Brooklyn, 760 murders a year for our 2.5 million population. 1 out of every 15 of us was the victim of a violent crime. And we were the 5th most violent place in America. 13 years later, Money Magazine said we were one of the 10 best places to live in America. Now that transformation, remarkable as it is, didn't come about because of any prosecutorial change to speak of. It came about principally because strong connections to the community. One of the first things I did was to create a community relations bureau to interact with all of the community leadership across Brooklyn, to get them to work with us to solve what seemed to be an intractable problem. We were suffering from the crime level from a drug-fueled crime wave that seemed out of control. The answer that we had here in New York, as well as the rest of the country, was everybody went to jail. Here we had the Rockefeller drug laws, which were despicable. They made no distinction between people who were addicts and those who sold for their profit. The other problem we had 3,000 folks coming home from prison each and every year, and 6 out of 10, and this is a national average, even to today, were rearrested within 3 years, and more than half went back. So I dealt with that in 2 ways. One, the first drug treatment program in the country. I started in 1990. In 1999, I started the first reentry program for the formerly incarcerated. Columbia University and Harvard University validated those 2 programs and found that they were very effective in reducing recidivism or reoffending rates. And Professor, that's at the end of the day the way you get public safety. You reduce reoffending rates. And so Brooklyn has changed dramatically because of those factors. But at the heart of it is, if we did not have the hearts and minds and energy of the people of this great county, we would not be sitting here talking about a place that has less than 30,000 serious felonies. 1 out of every 90 of us is now the victim of a serious crime. And last year, for the first time since 1960, we had less than 150 murders. So I'm not sugarcoating anything, but we're going in the right direction.
What is your message to the African Americans who have been stopped and frisked by police, who have found no reason to have arrested them?
Continue being outraged, and that's the way you'll get changed. And I think that the police commissioner has revised his protocol over the last 5 or 6 months. Stop and frisk have dropped dramatically. I think there's currently a federal case that is examining the constitutionality of stop and frisk, and may very well also have an impact. The problem we have as prosecutors, and there's 62 of us in the state, we don't see the stop and frisk cases because 90% of the cases never produce contraband. Nothing is found. And of course, when we do get cases that are the result of stop and frisk, we are very, very careful the way we evaluate whether or not the Fourth Amendment had been followed. And in many cases, as much as 40% of the cases are thrown out at the Early Case Assessment Bureau that I have.
You were criticized quite recently for being very soft with the Orthodox Jewish community. And then very recently, you released the names of 46 convicted child sex offenders in the Jewish community. How difficult was it for you to get this perhaps very sensitive information? And I wonder if there's any backlash from the Jewish community, from the Orthodox Jewish community.
Yeah, ultra-Orthodox, no, not at all. I still have very strong support, despite the fact that I've indicted and prosecuted 118 ultra-Orthodox people charged with sex perversion, and I convicted more than half of those cases with a 73% conviction rate. You know, I'm glad you brought it up, because at the time the story was first written that I was not prosecuting ultra-Orthodox Jews, there was a great deal of misunderstanding. Let me back up and explain to you that Brooklyn is not the only place in America with a large percentage of ultra-Orthodox Jews. In Orange County and Rockland County in the northern suburbs, in Miami or Dade County, and in Los Angeles County, there's a large Orthodox presence. In the first 19 years I was DA, none of us, not any of the 5 district attorneys, and I know every one of them, I know the 4, one of them worked for me, 4 very, very good lawyers. None of us were able to mount any challenges to get beyond the kind of insularity that's in the ultra-Orthodox community, which resulted in shunning and intimidation and other horrible things. And it was finally our collaboration with OHEL, with the Metropolitan Council on Jewish Poverty, and the Board of Jewish Family and Children's Services. We got together, and these are 3 very well-respected Orthodox social service agencies, and we produced something called Kol Tzedek, which is Hebrew for Voice of Justice. And that was begun some 4 years ago. At the time the first story was written in the newspapers, we said we have 87 people under indictment. I don't understand the criticism that we're not prosecuting. Well, why don't you release the names? Well, the answer is, if we release the names, as we were doing traditionally, there would be a relentless search for the victim and their family, and then all of the intimidation would start. So what I did was, I refused to release the name until the person got to court, which was the next day. And the name was part of the public record. You would think that I just one day woke up over a weekend and said, you know, I'm going to release the names of the convicted perverts. We've been releasing names of the people we've convicted of sex perversion for well over a year, because there's no more concern that we have about people not coming forward, because they are coming forward, and we're able to mount credible prosecutions of people who are perverts.
You're a white candidate in a borough, Brooklyn, the great borough of Brooklyn, where a third of the population is black. What's been the response to your candidacy from the black community? I know you've had a few very powerful endorsements.
Oh, I've great support in the African American community for a couple of reasons. And it's not just about Howard Beach. Of course, I'm remembered by folks of a certain age as the prosecutor who brought justice to the memory of Michael Griffith in the Howard Beach case. I was his chief trial attorney. And I probably got elected with tremendous support from the black community because of that case. But the African American community sees me as someone who is unique in the way he approaches the way justice is given to people of color in this county. No one has more progressive programs in this country than I do. And I don't care if they are African American district attorneys or white or Latino. I'm very, very proud of the fact that there's one young man in Philadelphia, Seth Williams, first African American DA in the history of Philadelphia DA's office, who has stolen all of my programs. And he's very, very kind, and he mentions that he does steal them. But the African American community knows that I have a very, very strong tie to the community, particularly in the way in which I deal with trying to keep kids out of jail and also trying to help people coming home from prison, many of whom are African American, trying to help them rehabilitate themselves. You know, I said 6 out of 10, the national average, of folks coming home from prison are returned within 3 years. Well, half of them are 6 out of 10 are rearrested, half go back to prison. In my program, it's 2 out of 10. And I believe if we continue to refine the program, we'll knock it down to 1 out of 10 and even fractions. So I have a very, very strong tie with the African American community and the Latino community in this county.
I watch a lot of television, and I watch CSI a lot. That's one of my favorite programs. And when I knew I was going to be interviewing you, I wondered whether or not you use any of the technology that we see on programs like CSI.
Of course, and you know, the technology of DNA, for example, has led to the to the exoneration of so many people. Thank God. And I work very, very closely with the Innocence Project, Professor Barry Scheck, for example. Our concern is we call it the CSI effect, because when we select a jury, we've got to make sure jurors understand that in this case you may not see the kind of technology you see on TV. This may be just a witness identification case with several corroborative witnesses. And so what we found before we started to work very, very hard in selecting juries and giving that charge to them is people were saying, well, where are the fingerprints? You know, where's the DNA? So we were having trouble getting convictions. Well, that's changed because we now have learned from it. But yeah, I think every major office has a level of technology that has made the justice system much more fair.
Talking about television, moving from CSI to this very popular program on CBS called Brooklyn DA. Is this about your office?
It's all about my kids, all about my assistants, all about our programs, and I was delighted that CBS singled us out for this real great honor. You know, it ran for 6 weeks, 1 hour a week. It was carrying a viewership of 4 million a week. CBS thinks they have an Emmy, and they were very, very happy with the product, and we were too. I was thrilled that my assistants were showcased, because these are very, very hard-working young men and women. If you saw the show, Professor, you know how diverse my office is. I have seen
the show, yes.
It's a very diverse office, so it's changed greatly.
If you are re-elected as Brooklyn District Attorney, what can we expect from you in the coming years?
I have a couple of major goals. Number one, if you remember Red Hook 15 years ago, you wouldn't go there unless you had a platoon of Marines from the 3rd Marine Division. I put, along with Mayor Giuliani, and it has been continued on, the first multi-jurisdictional community court in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn. The community leaders, the religious leaders, the elected leaders will tell you the reason that Red Hook is one of the safest places in New York City today is that community court. It was transformative. We have a IKEA, we have a Fairway Market, we have our own cruise terminal. The next community court is going to be in Brownsville. We're 2 years away from it. We've been working with the Center on Court Innovation, which was our partner in Red Hook, for the last 3 years. We have a youth court up already in Brownsville, and in 2 years we'll have a full multi-jurisdictional court. I hope with the success of Brownsville, and I believe the miracle of Red Hook will be the miracle of Brownsville, I hope we'll be able to convince the court system that the decision made to centralize the court system nearly 70 years ago was the wrong decision. We used to have local courts everywhere in New York City, special sessions, municipal courts, magistrates courts. You could walk 20 blocks from your home and walk into a court and see justice in front of you. When they centralized the system, all of the credibility in the neighborhoods went downtown. I want to return the justice system to the neighborhoods, and that's one major goal I have.
What would be an important second?
Reentry. I can only give resources to my formerly incarcerated to 1,000 of them. We have 3,000 coming back every year. So we have a serious problem. We have 1,000 people who reoffend at the rate of 2 out of 10, and 2,000 at the rate of 6 out of 10. I believe I can get the ear of the new mayor and the city council and get the money to offer this program to any and everyone who comes home from prison.
Brooklyn District Attorney Charles Hynes, candidate for Brooklyn District Attorney Charles Hynes. You've got a big race coming up, and you said that you are comfortably ahead, or feeling that you're comfortably ahead.
I believe I'm going to win, but I don't take anything for granted. I'm out campaigning very, very hard. Very hard.
Good. We can't even see it on your face. You still look very fresh.
Thank you.
Thanks for being my guest on Brooklyn 45.
Professor, thank you so much.
We've already had many very hot days this summer. Already. Are you protecting yourself from the sun's rays? Sharon Rose has a warning for you.
The sun has many positive benefits, such as delivering vitamin D and giving us energy. However, there are dangers of being in the sun too much. Being overexposed to the sun can also cause you to develop skin cancer, which is a growing problem, affecting millions of people. While the Food and Drug Administration recommends that you apply 1 ounce of sunscreen to fully protect your body, unfortunately, most of us use only a quarter of that amount. Using less than the recommended 1 ounce lowers the sun's protection factor. And when people use less sunscreen, they tend to miss spots. Oh, this is dangerous. So, when using sunscreen, you should spray a few times over each area. In this hot summer weather, you also need to remember to reapply sunscreen every 2 hours, since sweating, swimming, and rubbing can cause sunscreens to wear off, even those sunscreens that are labeled water resistant. A word not just to the wise, but to everyone. Take precautions in this heat. I wish you a great, healthy summer. I'm Sharon Rose. Back to you, Sam.
Brooklyn 45 with Professor Samte.
Surprise! A homeless shelter for 200 up to 800 persons is being built in your neighborhood, and you found out about it by accident. And I literally mean by accident. Well, that's no fairy tale, no movie trailer, or an excerpt from a novel. Joining me to discuss this are Roderick Rudy Daly, educator and community leader, and Sharon Borno, president of the Glendale East Flatbush Civic Association. Welcome to Brooklyn 45.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon, you are a stone's throw away from this homeless shelter that's coming to your area.
Yes.
Tell me about it. At least what you know about it.
Well, basically what I know about it is the Department of Homeless Shelters and WIN, which is Women in Need, requested that this site be selected for a shelter. And so about maybe a year and a half ago, it was brought to the board, which is Community Board 18. I was apprised of it and spoke out at the meetings concerning them putting this, what we consider not the suitable place to bring into the community. We felt that it would be oversaturated, considering the fact that they were speaking of 180 beds, 180 units, That means 5 people per capita. That's like 1,000 people all at once coming into the community. Secondly, we was concerned, of course, about crime. And when you think of shelter, we don't know how it would be run. We certainly don't know about the security end of it. We understand wholeheartedly that people need housing. But we felt like maybe it wasn't enough time to prepare in order to make a sound decision. And obviously our councilman would have to be involved in that also. So we're wondering, like, why such short notice?
Rudy.
So my basic concern, I mean, I heard about it through emails. I have several concerns about having the shelter within our community. Mm-hmm. The first one is that there's a school literally right down the block. We have 2 elementary schools. As a matter of fact, there's one on Firegate Road, PS 198, and I believe the other one is 309. Don't quote me on that exact number, but right down the street you have two schools. Mm-hmm. When you look at that and you look at homelessness and the potential for danger, and when we talk about our young people, I'm an educator, and I am very much afraid of what hazard might potentially happen when you bring in a homeless shelter into a neighborhood, dealing with children where they're hanging out on the street all day. Your parents dropping their children off. Some students get dropped off a little bit early for school. Some students, they have to stay a little bit later. When you talk about the winter, I'm really looking at the hazard that happens. Sharon brought up crime. That's another issue. That's a major issue. You have a lot of homeless people loitering on the street, loitering in our neighborhood. Take, for example, when we talk about the one by Bedford and Atlantic. You have a lot of panhandling that goes on. You have a number of people hanging out, doing obscene things over that community. And
you think the same thing can happen?
It's bound to happen. You see, when you learn through experience, and this is one experience that we don't want to learn from.
Now I know that there are meetings already that's taking place.
Yes.
Is it too late for anything to be done about this homeless shelter, you think?
I would say at this time they have already broken ground. They've broken ground to the point that they excavated on the 15th and they actually broke a gas main.
Oh.
Yes.
I heard that people were evacuated as well?
Yes, people had to leave their homes, and at that point, that's when we started making the 311 calls. We said, let's, develop a paper trail here, because we don't know, and then they had a stop work order on it. Coming to find out that they actually did not have permits for some of the things. So at this point, they started again, I think today. So they're back in there again, on the same site.
So, this homeless shelter, is it a fait accompli? What are your fears? What do you think?
I think as a community, we need to get up. We need to do grassroots movements to bring attention to the potential hazards. Do I think it's fait accompli? I don't think so until people start moving in. That's when I would say that it's done with. I mean, I do know that as of this present moment, they have started the work, as has been pointed out. However, I believe that we can still fight for not to have this in our community that will directly affect our students in our community that we live in. Not to mention, one other aspect, we are looking at property values as well. And when you look at property value within our community, and I hate to be, the person that says this, but oftentimes these things seem to happen more so within our communities. And
when you say our communities, what do you mean?
Communities of color, middle class communities, where we have, fought very hard to buy homes within these communities, to find out that something. A homeless shelter comes in, lowers the value of what it is that we have worked very hard to ascertain here in the good old New York City, right here in Brooklyn.
You've seen homeless shelters in other areas. Is there any education that can be done if there's nothing that can be done about stopping this homeless shelter? I know that may be a pipe dream. Is it a pipe dream? Education of the persons who are going to be living in these shelters, where they're acclimated to the environment, to the area where they live, the fact that there are schools around.
A homeless shelter, by definition, is generally a temporary stay.
Yes.
So, being that it's generally a temporary stay for someone, the influx of individuals can change a matter of days, matter of minutes, matter of hours, or long term. We don't know what that looks like. So, to spend money to educate, I don't believe that there's enough education that could happen fast enough to educate the individuals coming in, nor enough education fast enough to educate the community. Now, like I said to you before, we have lived in that community. I've lived in the 45th district for over 33 years. And it's not going to be enough time to educate the people coming in and the people who live in the district. And I know that at 33 years, for me to hear by email, I'm very angry about it.
Homeless shelter coming. Glenwood Road between East 45th and East 46th Streets, and the community is concerned. Thank you, Rudy Daly. I was going to say Roderick Rudy Daly. It is your name.
Yes.
Thank you, Rudy Daly, and thank you, Sharon Borno. And I know you've got a fight in your hands.
Well, we actually have petitions going around. If there's nothing that can be done, then we obviously have to sit down and speak with these people. We have to have some kind of dialogue with them going forward.
Thank you for being a guest on Brooklyn 45. We'd like to hear your comments about this and other issues that we've discussed. Post your comments on our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/Brooklyn45.samtate. It's long. www.facebook.com/Brooklyn45TV. Sam Tate. Also, like us on Facebook. Like us on Facebook and ask your friends to do the same. This is Brooklyn 45. I'm Sam Tate.